The recruitment office was a hive of morning chaos, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and printer ink when she stepped through the door. Her polished Oxfords tapped a sharp rhythm against the scuffed tiles, slicing through the hum of voices like a knife. Conversations faltered. Eyes darted up from paperwork. She was a vision, striking in a way that made even the most seasoned soldiers pause mid-sentence. Her auburn hair was swept into a flawless chignon, catching the harsh glow of the overhead lights. Her tailored navy coat hugged her frame, paired with crisp trousers and a silk scarf knotted with effortless precision. She didn't just walk. She commanded the space, each step radiating a quiet, unyielding confidence. Staff Sergeant Daniel Ruiz, a 15-year veteran of the desk, leaned back in his chair, his pen hovering over a stack of forms. He'd seen it all. Eager recruits, anxious parents, the occasional spouse dropping by with a care package. But this woman, she was different. Too polished for this gritty office, too poised for the chaos of military life. He pegged her as a civilian, probably here to inquire about a boyfriend or brother. "Can I assist you, ma'am?" he asked, his tone polite but tinged with the assumption she was out of place. "Looking for someone?" She offered a small, knowing smile, her hazel eyes glinting with something unreadable. Without a word, she reached into her leather satchel and slid a folder across the desk. The room, already quiet, seemed to hold its breath. Ruiz opened it, expecting a visitor's pass request or maybe a dependence inquiry. Instead, his eyes landed on a service record that hit like a shockwave. 4 Purple Hearts, 18 combat deployments, a Silver Star. The silence deepened, broken only by the faint hum of a flickering fluorescent bulb. Captain Elena Vasquez, United States Army. The name stared back at him from the military ID she'd placed beside the folder. Ruiz blinked, his mind scrambling to reconcile the woman before him with the warrior etched in ink. She looked like she'd just stepped off a fashion shoot, not out of a war zone. "Ma'am, I didn't realize," he stammered, his usual composure crackings. "No worries," she said, her voice warm but steady, like a fire carefully contained. "It's a common mistake." Around them, the office was a frozen tableau. A pair of young recruits at the back whispered, their voices barely audible. "No way she's military," one muttered. "She's too perfect." His buddy shushed him, but not before Elena's gaze flicked their way, her expression unchanging. She didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge the comment, just kept her focus on Ruiz. "I need to verify some details in my file," she said, her tone professional but laced with purpose. "I'm up for a promotion soon, and I want to ensure everything's in order." Ruiz flipped through the folder, his fingers lingering on the DD Form 214, a document he knew well, though this one was anything but ordinary. It detailed a career forged in fire, a Bronze Star for Valor in Iraq, 2017, where she'd dragged 2 wounded comrades from a collapsing outpost under enemy fire. A Purple Heart from a 2019 ambush in Helmand Province, where shrapnel had torn through her shoulder, but she'd kept her squad moving. 18 deployments, he said, almost to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. 19 now, she corrected, her tone matter-of-fact. "Just returned from Yemen last week." The young recruit who'd whispered earlier couldn't hold back. "No offense, ma'am, but you don't look like you've seen combat. You look like, I don't know, a movie star or something?" The air in the room tightened, every eye on Elena. Ruiz braced for a reaction, but she only turned to face the recruit, her smile unwavering but her eyes sharp, like a blade catching the light. "Funny you say that," she said, her voice calm but carrying an edge. "I did a photo shoot for a magazine once, Vogue, 2020. Women breaking barriers. They wanted a soldier who could look the part of both warrior and icon. Took them 6 hours to make me look like someone who hadn't spent a decade in the dirt." The recruit, barely out of his teens, flushed red, sinking into his chair. Elena took a step closer, her movements precise, deliberate. Not the strut of someone chasing attention, but the controlled grace of a predator navigating a battlefield. Combat doesn't care about your cheekbones, she said, her voice low but resonant. Bullets don't stop to admire your outfit, and when your squad's pinned down, bleeding out, they don't care if you're pretty. They care if you're the one who gets them out alive. Master Sergeant Clara Holt, a grizzled 25-year veteran who'd been quietly observing from her corner desk, stood up. At 54, she carried the weight of 3 wars in her posture, her eyes sharp enough to cut through bullshit. Captain Vasquez, she said, her voice steady but warm. That's Silver Star, Iraq, 2017. You were with the 101st Airborne, weren't you? Elena nodded, her expression softening slightly. Yes, ma'am, Mosul. Holt's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. I was there. Different battalion, but we heard about you. They said someone ran through a kill zone to pull out their team. Took a hit but kept going. That was you? Elena's gaze dropped for a moment, her fingers brushing the edge of her scarf. It was just the job, she said quietly. Holt gestured toward her face. May I? Elena hesitated, then nodded, gently tugging at the scarf to reveal a faint scar tracing her jawline, a thin silvery line barely visible under the flawless makeup. 4 surgeries, she said. The doctors were artists. You'd only notice if you knew what to look for. Ruiz cleared his throat, his voice softer now. Captain, why didn't you say something when we assumed you were a civilian? Elena leaned back, her posture relaxed, but her eyes piercing. Because it happens every day, she said. I walk in, and people see what they want to see. A woman who looks like she's never held a rifle, never crawled through mud, never lost anyone. It's easier to let them think that than to fight every single assumption. She opened her satchel and pulled out a small mirror, checking her reflection with a quick glance. The hardest part isn't the deployments or the firefights, she said, snapping the mirror shut. It's knowing you have to be 10 times better than everyone else just to be seen as equal. And even then, someone's always going to question whether you belong. The recruitment office felt smaller now, the air heavier with the weight of Captain Elena Vasquez's words. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed louder, a constant drone underscoring the silence that followed her revelation. Staff Sergeant Daniel Ruiz sat back, his hands still resting on the open folder, her service record a stark reminder of the gap between perception and reality. The young recruit who'd spoken out of turn, Private First Class Ethan Carter, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face still flushed from her response. The other soldiers in the room, corporals shuffling papers, a sergeant answering a phone, kept their eyes down, but their attention was fixed on her. Elena leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped on the desk, her Oxfords catching a stray beam of sunlight filtering through the blinds. I'm not here to make a scene, she said, her voice steady but carrying a quiet intensity. I just need to make sure my file is clean before the promotion board next week. I've been passed over before, and I'm not letting it happen again. Her words weren't a plea. They were a statement of fact, delivered with the precision of someone who'd learned to navigate skepticism at every turn. Master Sergeant Clara Holt, still standing by her desk, crossed her arms, her weathered face softening with something like respect. Promotion to Major? She asked, her tone carrying the weight of someone who'd seen the system chew up good soldiers before. Elena nodded. Yes, ma'am, the board's in 6 days, and I've been told my command presence is under scrutiny. She let out a short, dry laugh. Apparently, I don't look the part. Carter, the young recruit, opened his mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it. Instead, he leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. Ma'am, if you don't mind me asking, what makes a real soldier? I mean, with all due respect, you've got the record, but... He trailed off, clearly aware he was treading dangerous ground. Elena's eyes flicked to him, and for a moment, the room braced for another sharp retort. But her expression softened, and she leaned back, considering the question. That's a fair one, she said. Courage, discipline, loyalty. Those are the textbook answers, and they're not wrong. But the truth, it's about showing up when it's hard. When the odds are against you. When you're scared. When you're bleeding. And you still do the job because it's bigger than you. She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "It's not about how you look. It's about what you do when no one's watching." She reached into her satchel again, pulling out her phone and scrolling through it with a practiced flick of her thumb. "Here," she said, turning the screen toward Carter. The photo showed a woman barely recognizable as the polished captain before them. Her face was streaked with dust and sweat, her auburn hair matted under a helmet, her eyes fierce and unyielding as she crouched in a bombed-out street, an M4 slung across her chest. "This was me in Fallujah 2018, she said. 3 days without sleep, pulling my team out of an ambush. That's what a soldier looks like." She swiped to another photo. This one showed her in a dusty outpost, kneeling beside a wounded civilian, her hands steady as she applied a tourniquet while a helicopter's rotors roared in the background. "Yemen, 2024, she said. "We were evacuating a village under fire. I don't think I slept for a week." She swiped one last time, revealing a formal shot. Elena in her dress uniform, her silver star gleaming as a general pinned it to her chest. Her face was composed, but her eyes held the same fire as in the battlefield photos. "And this was 3 months later," she said. "Same woman, same soldier, just a different setting." The room was silent, the weight of her story settling over them like dust after an explosion. Ruiz cleared his throat, his voice quieter now. "Captain, what can we do to help with your promotion board? If there's anything in your file that needs fixing, we'll make it happen." Elena shook her head, her smile tinged with resignation. "It's not about the paperwork, Sergeant. It's about walking into that boardroom and proving, again, that I'm not just a face, that I've earned every inch of my place here." Before anyone could respond, the door swung open and Colonel Marcus Delgado entered. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s, his uniform crisp, his presence filling the room like a storm rolling in. The soldiers snapped to attention, chairs scraping against the floor. "As you were," he said, his voice a low rumble. His eyes landed on Elena, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "Captain Vasquez? Didn't expect to see you here." "Colonel," she said, standing to meet his gaze, her posture shifting to parade ground precision. "Just tying up some loose ends with my records, sir." Delgado's gaze moved to the folder on Ruiz's desk, and he raised an eyebrow. "Mind if I take a look?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "Not at all, sir." Delgado flipped through the file, his expression unreadable at first. Then his eyebrows lifted, and he let out a low whistle. 19 deployments, he said, almost to himself. Silver Star, 4 Purple Hearts. "Vasquez, this is one hell of a career." He looked up at her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Why are you here, really?" Elena's composure held, but her fingers tightened slightly on the strap of her satchel. "Promotion board, sir. Next week. I've been passed over twice, and I'm making sure there are no surprises this time." Delgado's jaw tightened, and he set the folder down. "Passed over? With this record?" He shook his head. "Let me ask you something, Captain. If I saw you on the street, out of uniform, what would I think?" Elena met his gaze without flinching. "You'd probably think I was a lawyer or a CEO's assistant, someone who's never seen a day of hardship." Delgado nodded slowly. "And in uniform?" She didn't hesitate. "You'd wonder if I earned my rank or if I got it through charm and connections." Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of frustration beneath it. Delgado didn't look away. "That's honest," he said. "And I'll be honest, too. If I didn't know your record, I might have made the same mistake. But I was at Al-Anbar in 2018. I heard about a young captain who led her unit through a gauntlet of RPGs and sniper fire to secure a supply route. Saved a dozen lives that day." He paused, his eyes locking on hers. "That was you, wasn't it?" Elena's expression faltered for the first time, a crack in her polished armor. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "It was." Delgado nodded, turning to address the room. "Listen up," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez. 2 years ago, I was running a forward operating base in Syria. We had a mission to take out a high-value target, volunteers only, high risk. Captain Vasquez didn't just volunteer, she planned the op, knew every inch of the terrain, every enemy pattern. We got the target, got the intel, and got out alive because of her. He paused, letting the words sink in. On the way out, we hit an ambush. Lead vehicle was disabled, and we were taking fire from all sides. Captain Vasquez didn't hesitate. She ran through open ground, under heavy fire, to pull 3 wounded soldiers to safety, took shrapnel to the arm doing it, but she didn't stop until the job was done. The room was silent, every soldier hanging on his words. Carter, the young recruit, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Delgado turned back to Elena. "You're up for Major, you said." She nodded. "Yes, sir." He gave a sharp nod. "Good, because I'm on that board, and I just got word it's been moved up. It's tomorrow at 1300, and trust me, Captain, we're not going to be talking about your command presence. We're going to be talking about your record." Elena blinked, caught off guard. "Tomorrow, sir?" "That's right," Delgado said. "Be there. Be you. That's all you need." He gave her a nod, then turned and left the office, the door swinging shut behind him. The recruitment office seemed to exhale as Colonel Marcus Delgado's departure left a charged silence in its wake. Captain Elena Vasquez stood by the desk, her fingers still gripping the strap of her satchel. Her polished exterior unshaken, but her eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty. Tomorrow. The promotion board had been moved to tomorrow. 1300 hours. The weight of that news settled over her like the dust of a distant battlefield, heavy and inescapable. She smoothed her navy coat, a small grounding gesture, and gathered her folder from Staff Sergeant Daniel Ruiz's desk. "Sergeant," she said, her voice steady but softer now. "Thank you for your time. I'll get out of your way." Ruiz shook his head, his usual gruff demeanor replaced by something closer to awe. "Captain, I'm sorry for how we started this. I should have known better." Elena's smile was small but genuine, a spark of warmth breaking through her professional veneer. "It's all right, Sergeant. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. Just keep an eye out for the next soldier who doesn't fit the mold." She turned to leave, her Oxfords clicking softly against the tiles, but paused when Private First Class Ethan Carter, the young recruit who'd challenged her earlier, spoke up. "Ma'am?" His voice was tentative, his earlier bravado gone. "I was out of line before. I didn't mean to disrespect you." Elena turned, her hazel eyes meeting his. For a moment she studied him, the nervous set of his shoulders, the way his hands fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve. "You're young, Private," she said, not unkindly. "You'll learn. Just remember, a soldier's worth isn't in their face or their uniform. It's in their actions." Master Sergeant Clara Holt, who'd been quietly observing, stepped forward. "Captain," she said, her voice carrying the gravel of years spent in harsh places, "what you said earlier about being underestimated. That hit hard. I've been in this game long enough to know it's not just you. How do you keep going when it feels like the deck's stacked against you?" Elena's gaze softened, and she leaned against the desk, her posture relaxing for the first time. "You don't," she said simply. "Not at first. I spent my early years trying to be what everyone else thought a soldier should be. Tougher, louder, less me. I cut my hair to a bob, ditched anything that made me stand out. I thought if I could just fade into the background, I'd prove I belonged." She paused, her fingers brushing the scar along her jaw, hidden again beneath her scarf. But it didn't work. The assumptions didn't stop. So I decided to stop hiding. To be the best version of myself, not someone else's idea of a warrior. She straightened, her voice gaining strength. "The military's changing, Master Sergeant. Not fast enough, but it's changing. And it's people like us, people who don't fit the old picture, who are pushing it forward. We show up, we do the work, and we don't let anyone tell us we're less than." Holt nodded, a rare glint of approval in her eyes. "You're going to make one hell of a major, Vasquez." Elena's lips twitched into a half-smile. "Hope so. I've got a board to convince first." She glanced at her watch, then slung her satchel over her shoulder. "Wish me luck." As she walked out, the door swinging shut behind her, the office felt different. Quieter, but not empty. It was as if her presence had left an imprint, a challenge to see beyond the surface. The next afternoon, at 1300 hours, Elena walked into the promotion boardroom, her dress uniform immaculate, her ribbons and medals gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The board, 5 senior officers, including Colonel Delgado, sat behind a long table, their faces a mix of curiosity and scrutiny. She stood at attention, her posture flawless, her eyes steady. Delgado, presiding as the senior member, gave her a nod. "Captain Vasquez, take a seat. Let's talk about your record." The questions came fast, about her deployments, her leadership under fire, her vision for the future. Elena answered with the same precision she'd shown in combat, her voice clear, her responses grounded in experience. When they asked about her command presence, she didn't flinch. "Sirs," she said, "if command presence means looking like a poster soldier, I'll never fit that mold. But if it means making decisions that save lives, leading soldiers through chaos, and never backing down from a fight, then my record speaks for itself." By the time she left the room, the air felt lighter, the weight of doubt lifting from her shoulders. At 1500 hours, Ruiz's phone rang. It was Delgado. "Sergeant," he said, his voice carrying a rare warmth. "Captain Vasquez aced her board. She'll be Major Vasquez by the end of the week." Ruiz grinned, relief washing over him. "That's outstanding, sir. She earned it." "She did," Delgado said, "and thank your team for how you handled her yesterday. It made a difference." 3 months later, Major Elena Vasquez returned to the recruitment office, her new rank insignia shining on her dress uniform. The room went quiet again, but this time it was different. Not shock, but reverence. She carried herself with the same quiet confidence, her auburn hair still swept into a chignon, her scarf knotted with precision. But now, every soldier in the room knew who she was, what she was. As she spoke with Ruiz about a new recruit, a young woman who'd visited the day before, nervous about whether she could hack it as a soldier, Elena's tone was warm but firm. "She reminds me of myself, Sergeant," she said. "Scared she doesn't belong. Worried she's not enough. Make sure she knows she is. That being different doesn't mean being less." Ruiz nodded, his respect for her palpable. "Will do, Major." Elena smiled, then turned to leave, her Oxfords echoing one last time against the tiles. Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows,